Hi, it's Judy. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you're joining me again. Today's a bit of a slightly different thing for me. I did a craft room, art room studio tour a few months ago and showed you some of the furniture that I have installed in my studio that I think is a bit different from things that I've seen in other studio tours. And I will link a connection to it in the box up in whichever corner it occurs in, because I can never remember whether it's my left shoulder or my right shoulder, and this is all mirrored, so it's all a bit strange. There are two things that I wanted to cover today. The first thing was to show you how I've added a few bits and pieces to the studio to make it work more effectively for me. I also did a video showing how I use all of my Scattus pegboards, and they've changed a little bit too because I'm working out how to live in this room, and I thought it might be helpful for you to see some of the changes that I've made to make my life a little bit easier. And the other problem that I'm discovering that I have is that I currently store an awful lot of my dies for my die cutting machine in CD cases, and they're getting harder and harder to find. People are not buying CDs anymore, and they're not taking the CDs out and putting them into folders and getting rid of the cases. So I need to find a different storage. The other problem with the CD cases I find is that because I can't see the dies, there are a whole bunch of them that I just haven't used in years because I don't know what they look like, and I'm not sure if some of them I'm not even sure if they're still my style. So this is a real opportunity for me to take all of my dies out and have a look at what I've got and then find a different way of storing them. And then the empty cases I can repurpose because I also store my cling stamps in CD cases, and I can now repurpose some of the ones with the dies in it into one for stamps. For some reason, my brain doesn't have as much of a problem with remembering what stamps I've got. I don't know, it's the way my brain works. So I've seen on various different people's craft room tours these great magnetic boards up on their walls that have all of their dies stored on the magnetic boards, and I don't have the space in this studio to be able to devote that much wall space or that much any flat space really to doing that sort of thing. And then I realized that actually I've got the inside of my wardrobe doors. So I thought, could I use those? But then I also realized I don't like the black magnetic sheet look once you've put the sheets up. I don't like that. So I was trying to think of a way that I could have them fit in with the aesthetic of my room. And then I saw this person who had taken her magnetic sheets and had covered them in card with just a bit of double-sided tape and then adhered her dies to the card, and it was holding up very well for her. She had them in little plastic envelopes and then in a container that she could keep on her desk and flip through it. Well, my desk has to remain clear. It has to be a clear working space. I can't work in this studio if my desk is also storage. So that's that moment where I went, okay, so can I do this with a wardrobe? So I think what I'm going to try and do is I've got some magnetic sheet that I bought to do some signs for a friend's car, and they turned out to not be weatherproof, particularly for Perth storms. So I've got some left over. I'm going to cut that down and put it onto the wall, and then I think I'm going to cover it with self-adhesive vinyl. Why are words so hard today? And I thought you might like to join me on that adventure and see how it works out. So if that is of interest to you, stick around. I will cover the pegboard and the few minor changes that I've made and first, so that if you decide you want to avoid the dies and the magnetic storage, then I won't be offended. I hope you enjoy this sort of video. If you like this sort of video and it's interesting for you, could you please do me a favor and give it a thumbs up? Consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps me out. My channel is growing slowly and I'm trying to produce more content to put out to keep things interesting. And there are some fun things coming up as soon as the weather here improves. We're at the end of winter and we've just had a number of weeks of nasty, horrible storms that have blown everything around, and so I have been reluctant to do some of the projects that I wanted to do for this space because they require me to work out in my alfresco, and with the amount of wind going about, I just couldn't risk having resin out in wet, windy weather. But hopefully, fingers crossed, our winter storms are passing now and we're heading into spring, and I should be able to get out and get the resin done before it ironically then gets too hot for me to do anything else. So stick around. Okay, so the first addition that I've made to the studio is rubbish, how I deal with rubbish. So I have this little bin that sits on the side of my desk. It's the Brogrund from IKEA, and it is held onto the side of the Kallax by this bracket. So the bracket is screwed into the side of the Kallax using drywall screws, the ones that butterfly out at the back, so that it doesn't come off. You can see I tried it with ordinary screws and it just ripped off when I knocked it. So that is now, that clips on there, the liner goes in like so, and then the lid goes on. And while I'm sitting at the desk, I can just sweep things off into the desk. If I am actually sweeping things off, I turn the lid around and I can literally just scrape things off the desk into the bin. And that's working out very well for me. I now have a cup holder so that I can have my required iced coffee next to me. And if I'm doing something that requires me to be cutting large pieces of material or paper, the nice thing about this cup holder is that it just comes straight off the side and I can tuck it away in a drawer and leave it until I next need it. Right. I'm doing a lot of sewing these days, so there's a couple of changes that I've made to the studio. I bought myself one of these wool ironing pads, and I frequently have it out on the desk while I'm ironing something, and then I might have to put it away while I cut some material or whatever. So it now is just the right size that it slots neatly into the Kallax, away and out of sight, but easily grabbable if I need it. The other thing that I use a lot is my Tonic glass cutting mat. So I can just pull it out and put it up on the table again when I need it, and then when I don't, I put it down. Right, what's another change? Right, so let's move over here to my PAX wardrobes. So you were seeing that I had this printer on this pull-out drawer, and that's worked out really well. If I need to scan anything or I need to print on A3, then I can pull it out from the wardrobe. I can do whatever it is that I need to do, and then when I'm done, I can just push it all back. But most of the time, because I'm mostly printing on A4 or occasionally 8.5 by 11, but mostly A4 because this is my sublimation printer, what I found was there's a little lip here of about 1.5, maybe 1.25 centimeters, and I couldn't get to the paper trays to refill them easily because they would just knock on this. So what I've done is I've taken it's actually the back part of this Billy extension, height extension, and I've placed it underneath the printer, and it's just raised it up enough that the printer and all the trays are now clear of the lip, and that's working out really well. It's reinforcing. The final addition in terms of furniture to the room has been this little table. This is a little foldable table. It folds down so that it is only this thick, which means that I can tuck it away when I don't need it. But to be honest, it's out most of the time. But the nice thing about it is that it is small and light enough that I can move around. It's big enough that I can put my sewing machine on it and have my sewing machine set up on this while I cut things on my desk. So I just swivel backwards and forwards between the two, and again, it's made things so much easier to work with. Again, the bin is just there so I can sweep thread offcuts and fabric offcuts straight into the bin, and that keeps the room a little cleaner. And then if I need to do something on my desk that is a little bit longer, although it's not exactly the right height for the desk, it's high enough that it stops things from bending down off the back end or sliding off, or, you know, all of those various hazards that happen. Right, these are my Scattus pegboards that live on the end of my Tower of Kallax. And this one, particularly on the right here, has changed quite a bit. I'm still working out how best to utilize these items, but I've moved one of those magnetic strips, let's see if I can point out this one here, down to the bottom. And because I sit directly, see if I swivel very slowly, this is my desk. So I sit in my chair here and do stuff and sew. And you can see I've got my fabric scissors, my favorite pairs of scissors, the little screwdriver for tightening, my hoop ring, those sorts of things are all just there where I can reach them. This tray here has all my weeding, the favorite tools that I go to. So there's an erasable pencil, and oh, that's where my eyebrow tweezers are. I was wondering where they were. There's a permanent marker in here, those sorts of things, pencil, clear ruler, those are all sort of, so I can just reach up and grab something from there. My heat gun and my craft iron are just here where I can grab them if I need them. Although I don't currently use them, my Making Memories cutters are here because the cutting plates are on the front of the Kallax still. What else has changed? I've hung my steel rules where I can grab them. My rollers are there where I need them. The 6-inch or 15 centimeter rulers are here where I can grab them. My distressing tool where I can grab them. And then over to the side here, I've got a hook where I've got my long ruler hanging, and then I've got my French curve ruler hanging there as well. And I've added this coat hanger drying rack into my space. It folds up out of the way if I don't have any t-shirts that I need to store, but it's a great place for me to hang my cardigan in when I come in the morning, but also have some t-shirts that are ready for me to turn into projects. So this is my PAX wardrobe system that I use for most of my storage. If you look at my art studio furniture tour, there's a fairly detailed look in each of the cupboards to show you how I've got it set up. But this final cupboard here is the cupboard that I store my Sizzix Big Shot switch in. And when I want to use it, I simply pull it out, open it up, and I can use it as I need it. But the dies are over there in the Tower of Kallax and not easy to get to. I've got a couple of new dies that I've bought, and I've basically just chucked them out the back here. The plates get stored here behind the Big Shot, and that's fine. So I thought what I would do is I would utilize the inside of this wardrobe door. So it's 50 centimeters wide and 180 centimetres tall. And I think that's going to be an elegant amount of space for me to use. I think what I will do is try and take the door off the hinges, put it onto my desk because that will be easier to handle. So I have this sheet of magnetic stuff. It was supposed to be, I could put vinyl on it and stick it on people's cars, and it just didn't work. It wasn't strong enough. The magnets weren't strong enough, so they didn't stick to the cars. The vinyl went horrible on it. It just didn't work out. Fairly lightweight, so I figured that I would use it. It's 61 centimeters wide, so that's 24 inches, and it's about 69. I've got 69 centimeters left of the length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it in half. That will give me about 30 centimeter wide strips, and should be nearly 140 centimeters tall. So that should give me plenty of space to store dies on. And if worst comes to the worst and it's not enough space for my dies, then I will buy some more magnetic sheet and some more of this stuff, or I've got some more heavy duty stuff that I could use. So let's get going on cutting this down, and then I can bring the door over and we can start to glue it all up. I've now got the magnetic sheets laid out on my craft table, and I'm very carefully measuring the halfway point down the middle of the sheet. This is one of those moments where I say, don't do what I do and measure twice, not cut and cut once, because I didn't measure correctly and I cut them slightly slimmer, one side slightly slimmer than the other. In retrospect, what I probably should have done then is to either cut down one of the pieces to match or cut the difference and piece them together. But I didn't, and that came back to bite me later. Here I'm sticking some double-sided carpet tape onto the vinyl side of the magnetic sheets so that they will hold still on the door, on the inside of the door, while I put the vinyl over the top. This is double-sided carpet tape from Duck, and it's quite heavy duty. Here you go, here's a picture. So now I'm removing the door from the wardrobe and bringing it over to the table. So this is a trick I learned ages ago with scrapbooking with double-sided sticky tape. If you lift up the corners of whatever it is that you're sticking down with double-sided tape, no matter what size it is, then you can stick the corners down, and because there's not too much glue, it can just hold in place while you make sure that you've got the placement correct. Then once you're happy with the placement, you can then pull the whole tape out and your piece will be lined up perfectly wherever you want it. So see here, I've just checking, and it works. You can see it better with the second piece. I'm checking to make sure it's going to work. So then I just lift up the edges of that tape and fold it back so that I've got some tabs sticking out. Put it into place, decide that that's where I want it to go, stick those two corners down, pull the strip out, and the whole thing gets adhered down. Very handy little tip. And this will just hold the sheets in place while I put the vinyl on top. It's not meant to actually adhere the sheets to the door. This is the vinyl I'm using, and it's 140 centimeters long, so plenty long enough to cover what I've got going on here. I think it's 160 actually. It was longer than the pieces that I needed to cover, so that worked out quite well. But it did have a tendency to roll up a bit. So it's one of those moments where I'm grateful that I've got a lot of steel rulers, because I could put a steel ruler down and it magnetized to the sheet underneath and held the vinyl in place. The end wasn't quite heavy enough, so I grabbed some pliers out of my tool drawer and that held it in place. So now I'm just pulling back the backing paper off the vinyl at the top, pulling back probably 2, maybe 3 centimeters. And then I just lined it all up. And that flattened that down. So once I was happy, again, this is one of those things, once you're happy with the alignment, you can then continue going further without having to worry too much about what you're doing. So using my scrapey tool from, this one's actually a Cricut brand one because Brother don't make one big enough, I simply pulled back the lining underneath and then pressed the vinyl into place with the scrapey tool, smoothing as I went along. So here's a better shot. And just pull back a little bit, flatten it down, and the vinyl is pretty forgiving. So if you make some mistakes and you get some wrinkles where you don't want them, it will allow you to lift them up and lift the vinyl up and scrape again. And just take your time. If you go too quickly, then it just won't work. And this is where I started to make a mistake. I tried to line up the front edge again, and I shouldn't have bothered. I should have just kept going. But I was getting it fairly smooth until I got to the second piece. And there were 2 problems. One of them was that the top edge of the second piece was sticking up. And so I had problems getting the vinyl to go over that. And then you can see where the second piece was narrower than the top piece, that caused a wrinkle in the vinyl, and there was nothing I could do to get it out. So I just decided to persist and work with what I'd already done. As it happens, the wrinkles don't cause too much of a problem. They're on a section where I've got some fairly wide, big dies, and the dies kind of fit around the bubbles or the wrinkles, as it were. So then, in order to alleviate the problem of the overhang at the front, I then decided to trim off 1 ruler width from the top magnetic sheet and then run that line all the way down the side of the wardrobe door. And that made things look a lot neater and tidier. And then I just did the same thing along the bottom, made sure it was as flat as possible, and then trimmed off that extra piece of vinyl at the bottom. And here we go. I've now put all of the dies that I'm going to keep for the moment up onto the door. So starting at the bottom, I have 2 Spellbinders alphabets, which I'm in 2 minds about keeping because, to be honest, if I need to cut an alphabet these days, I do it all on my Scan and Cut. Then I've got some Spellbinders dies that I have used fairly extensively. These ones mostly were seconds that I was given by Spellbinders or by a friend who was working for Spellbinders. Right, so then here, this little lot here, this is the Birds, the Tim Holtz Bird series. And I have found since I bought that I've not used it because every time that I want to go and use a die, I have to go and find every stupid little eye and feather and all of the various bits and pieces. Now with it all up on a magnetic sheet, I now know that this wing goes with this bird and these eyes go with this bird. So now if I want to die cut this bird out just on its own, I can just take that off the sheet. Likewise, this is the wing, the bird and the eyes for that one, the wing, the eyes and the bird for that one, the eyes, the bird and the wing for that one, and so on and so forth. And then here I've got all of the accessories. So all of the hats are at the bottom here. I've got the hearts and the flowers and the candy cane, the ties, the pen and the pencil, the gift, the balloons, the strings for the balloons, the broomstick and the pumpkin, all grouped together so I can just choose them as I wish. These two are another set that I was given by Sizzix, and I haven't used them because every time I've wanted to use them, I've been concerned about how I would store them after I had used them. This way now I can just put them straight back up on the sheet. Right, then these ones are the most used ones that I have from Spellbinders. I've used this one and these extensively in so many things. The autumn leaves have been used in a lot. I've used the daisies and the roses in cards a lot. And this one I used to use for a class and it was really, really useful. And then above that, I've got the Spellbinder double-sided texture plates. Again, I'm not sure how many of these I'm going to keep. I haven't really used many of them. I'm probably not going to keep the American flag. I can't remember what's on the back of it. Hang on. Stars. So I might use it, keep it, because I might use the stars, but I'm unlikely to use the flag because it's not my flag. But I'll see. I'll leave these up for a while, and if I'm not using them, then I will probably edit them out because then I'll have space for new ones. And finally, I've still got these 4 sets that I haven't even tried to find space for up on that wall. I think with these ones, what I'm probably going to do is buy magnetic sheets and put them onto them, and they will fit neatly into these containers that I've got. I just think that'll be a more sensible use of them, and it'll keep the instructions with them. I don't have any instructions. These were a gift from Sizzix, so they didn't come with all of the correct packaging. But these ones I've bought retail. Okay, so there we go. My dies are as organised as they're going to be for the moment. The thing that I need to remember about my studio and the way that it is that it's an ever-evolving place. I change what I'm doing. I just get bored of some of my bits and pieces and I move them out and bring new stuff in. And so an art space is not a static space. You don't just set it up and then go, oh, it's perfect, because it'll never be perfect. So each time that I'm in here and I'm working and I'm doing a little bit more and I find out how I'm working with bits and pieces, I move things around to suit the way that I'm working. And it might be that in 6 months' time, I find myself doing an awful lot of scrapbooking, in which case the way I've got things might not work the best, but they work currently. So the fact that I can get my sewing machine out and I can do stuff. Now that I've got this die board set up, I'm hoping that I'll be able to use my die cutting machine a bit more, because I've kind of missed not being able to do that. I hope that this has been enjoyable and that you've learned something, and if not, that you've been entertained at least. So I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.